In Israel, a phone vanished, a general was arrested, and the legal system began to crumble from within. What started as one military leak has exploded into the biggest judicial scandal in decades, reaching the highest offices of power. This is the week the mask fell off of Israel's untouchable elite. Last time, we spoke on the scandal regarding the military attorney general. Let's see how that has developed. But before I start, I would like to ask you, beg you, and point out that these horrible, shocking discoveries into Israel and Israeli society and the Israel legal system is not a reason for us to cast away Israel as God's people, but a reason for us to pray and intercede on behalf of Israel that justice and righteousness will come back. So, Major General Yifat Yerushalmi, until recently the military advocate general, was arrested on charges of obstruction of justice, fraud, and abuse of office. Charges stemming from the explosive Sde Teiman leak, in which classified IDF materials were funneled to the media, not to mention doctored to falsely frame the IDF. Tomer Yerushalmi had staged what now appears to be a simulated suicide attempt, a theatrical act that granted her time to erase or hide evidence, including her missing phone, and to build a narrative of victimhood. That phone, as later confirmed by investigators, likely contained the digital trail that could expose coordination at the very top of Israel's judicial hierarchy. The lost phone quickly became the symbolic heart of the scandal, and Zaka dive teams, police and security eunuchs combed the beaches of Herzliya after she claimed to have thrown it or dropped it into the ocean. Few believe the story. In the words of one commentator, the phone did not drown, it was assassinated. The device is believed to hold messages between Tomer Yerushalmi and Attorney General Gali Bahar-Miara, revealing deliberate misdirection of the High Court and the IDF command. Sources in the investigation said bluntly, if that phone surfaces, half of Kaplan will fall. Kaplan being the street where the protests against the government have gone on for the last few years, indicating left-leaning, liberal, progressive forces. During this time, the MAG was treated as a VIP. She was not handcuffed, not photographed, and barely interrogated, receiving what insiders called the celebrity treatment. Senior police commander, head of the investigations department, Boaz Blatt, who has a very close relationship with Baharav-Miara, approved every concession. Instead of formal questioning, Tomer Yerushalmi enjoyed hours of debriefs in a relaxed setting, controlling when and how she would respond. After 24 hours, the court extended her arrest, recognizing in unprecedented language both the danger and obstruction of justice. Yet even then, she had not faced real interrogation. By then, at least 7 officials had been questioned, 5 of them named suspects. Among them was Lieutenant Colonel L., a senior prosecutor in the military prosecution, suspected of physically transferring the Sde Teiman materials to Tomer Yerushalmi's office for the purpose of leaking to the media. The arrest forced into the open a far deeper question: can the Attorney General investigate herself? Baharav-Miara had assigned the original investigation to the MAG's office itself in September 2024, during a meeting between the MAG and the AG. In effect, the Attorney General handed the case to the prime suspect. By Monday, conservative jurists and the Knesset members called on her to immediately recuse herself. Justice Minister Yariv Levin, invoking precedents where previous AGs stepped aside for far less, initiated a formal move to strip Baharav-Miara of authority over the case and appoint an external investigator. This move triggered a constitutional clash. Baharav-Miara declared that Levin lacks any authority to reassign the probe, insisting only she can determine investigative jurisdiction. Levin countered that the basic law of the government clearly allows ministerial intervention when the AG is personally conflicted. A confidential meeting on Sunday night between Levin and the acting Civil Service Commissioner confirmed his intent to appoint special independent investigator, a retired judge with no ties to the justice establishment. The candidate, Justice Asher Kula, a former state comptroller and judicial ombudsman, later agreed, in principle, to head the probe, provided the government's authority is validated, which of course might mean that the Supreme Court has to do it, and they obviously won't, because Yitzhak Amit himself is the head of the deep state in Israel. Predictably, Baharav-Miara refused to consent, insisting that such an appointment would undermine the rule of law. In conservative circles, her words were received as pure irony. The sense of institutional panic intensified to unprecedented levels. Judge Yechiel Kasher, who had initially presided over a petition demanding the confiscation of Major General Tomer Yerushalmi's missing phone, recused himself abruptly after it emerged that he had previously been a law partner of Attorney General Gali Bahar-Miara. His withdrawal was seen as a forced move, an acknowledgement of how deeply intertwined the country's judicial elite truly is. The case passed then to Justice Noam Solberg, one of the High Court's few conservative justices. Of course, this is a relative term. It's not really that conservative. Solberg issued a formal order giving Baharav-Miara 36 hours until today at noon to respond to the allegations of conflict of interest and obstruction of justice. And these included the fact that the MAG herself had pardoned Baharav-Miara's son in a case of stolen military property. And the original Sde Teiman leak investigation had been placed directly under the AG's authority. Critics immediately noted that the double standard when the government had fired the AG, which happened a while back, the Supreme Court intervened within minutes to block the decision. But now, when the Attorney General herself is under suspicion, she is granted days, effectively buying time for her and her allies in the system to clean up the mess, to coordinate testimonies, and to bury evidence. Commentators described it as a judicial sleight of hand to protect their own. At the same time, Baharav-Miara refused to appear before the parliamentary committee that had summoned her, and the army censor and the head of police investigations, Boaz Blatt, who I remind you is her close associate, to discuss the MAG affair. Her refusal is, of course, contempt for democratic oversight. Reports by Milan Amar from Channel 14 and Yaakov Bardugo revealed that Police Commissioner Dani Levy was furious over Blatt's handling of the case and the leaks emerging from his department. Levy demanded full access to all documentation, suspecting that Blatt, who is personally close to the AG, had formed a tight inner circle of investigators loyal to him and her. Further revelations followed. Baharav-Miara and Boaz Blatt had together built the investigative team, effectively ensuring the probe remained under her influence. According to Bardugo, this amounted to a situation where the suspect handpicks her own interrogators. In one of the most bizarre discoveries, police investigators found handwritten notes torn up by the mag, summaries of media talking points and instructions given by her attorneys. The shredded papers recovered from her home are immediately classified as potential evidence of obstruction and a coordinated media manipulation. Behind these procedural skirmishes lies a larger, sophisticated truth. The same small circle of legal elites, that is the Kaplan clique as it's called in conservative media, has dominated Israel's judiciary, prosecution, academia, bureaucracy, the military echelon, and media for years. Tomer Yerushalmi's closest associates are veterans of the anti-reform protests. She personally authorized soldiers to participate in political demonstrations. The Attorney General, in turn, is linked to the same circles that attempted to block judicial reforms through mass protests and foreign-funded activism. Thus, what began as an internal IDF scandal now threatens to expose the deep entanglement between Israel's left liberal bureaucracy and its judicial organs, an elite apparatus operating above the state itself. On Tuesday, Defense Minister Israel Katz moved decisively, appointing attorney Itai Ophir as the new military advocate general. Ophir's background, a combat officer from Givati and resident of Samaria, is seen as positive, though critics immediately pointed out that Ophir once participated in the Wexler Foundation program, a network widely viewed as a left liberal indoctrination pipeline funding senior civil servants. Supporters countered that his values and proven record and combat service far outweigh such associations. We'll have to wait and see. As police extended Tomer Yerushalmi's arrest, her subordinates began to fall. Lieutenant Colonel L was placed on forced leave after it emerged that he had supplied investigative materials, videos, polygraphs, and classified memos to the MAG's office, which later leaked them to journalists. This revelation showed that the leak was no accident, but a coordinated campaign within the military prosecution to fabricate public narratives against IDF soldiers, portraying them as abusers to advance ideological goals. Within 48 hours, the story's focus expanded beyond the military. Reports surfaced that over 300 individuals, many linked to public institutions such as the Histadrut Labor Union and the Israeli Bar Association, were detained or summoned for questioning in a widening corruption probe. At the center of this second scandal stands Arnon Ben David, longtime head of the labor union, the Histadrut, and his wife, herself a senior attorney connected to the Bar Association's internal oversight committee. Investigators suspect the couple of orchestrating a system of patronage and political funding, funneling union money towards activist NGOs and media fronts aligned with the anti-government bloc. For conservatives, this is the missing piece, the financial engine of the deep state, linking judicial power, union control, and political activism under one umbrella. The overlap is striking. Many of those arrested in the Histadrut case had direct or indirect contact with the MAG's office, or were donors to causes defending Tomer Yerushalmi in the press. Several names also appear in civil society organizations that had petitioned the High Court to block the government's judicial reform earlier this year. What emerges is a network of influences that stretching from the courtroom to the newsroom. Legal officials, media editors, union bosses, and NGO directors all orbiting the same ideological axis. This realization shifted public discourse. The problem, many now argue, is not individual corruption, but systematic capture of Israel's democratic institutions by a self-serving elite that is also horribly left, woke, and ideologically anti-Israel. By the middle of the week, the bureaucracy was spiraling. The High Court of Justice, once seen as Israel's ultimate guardian of fairness, appeared in panic mode after Kasher's recusal and Solberg's cautious intervention. The justices held an emergency internal meetings to decide how to handle what insiders called the Baharav-Miara problem. Leaks from the Judicial Union suggested that senior judges feared a constitutional implosion if Levin succeeds in stripping the AG of her powers, which of course should happen as she's incredibly corrupt. Yet, outside the courts, the mood was different. For ordinary citizens, the crisis wasn't constitutional, it was moral. The mask of judicial neutrality had been ripped off. As the week closes, 3 procedural passes converged. The Attorney General's office is attempting to retain control, yet is delegitimized. The Justice Ministry under Levin is advancing a plan to appoint a special prosecutor, likely under cabinet oversight. And the State Comptroller and the Knesset committees are preparing independent inquiries into judicial misconduct and misuse of classified material. Together, these mechanisms may lead to the first structural reform of Israel's legal establishment since 1948. Even center commentators acknowledged that a complete reset might be necessary. Channel 14 hosts began calling this Israel's Watergate moment. In the words of one, they controlled the courts, the media, the unions, and the public narrative. Now they're losing control of reality. Public anger reached a boiling point. Channels 12 and 13, labeled by critics as propaganda arms of the bureaucracy, were accused of continuing to defend Baharav-Miara while smearing those exposing her corruption. Channel 14, in contrast, turned into the heartbeat of the resistance, airing daily updates from reporters who revealed in detail how the AG and Boaz Blatt had constructed the investigative team themselves. As Bardugo put it bluntly, she built the team, picked her own investigators, and now supervises their work. This isn't a probe, it's theater. The divide is stark. Channel 14 versus Channel 12, truth versus lies. For millions of Israelis, this wasn't just a scandal, it was the unveiling of a regime of deceit that had ruled the country through manipulation of courts and media alike. The message was unmistakable. The bureaucracy was collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. What began with a missing phone has become a referendum on power itself. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and I want to remind you that all of this depressing news is not a reason to abandon Israel, but a reason to pray for Israel. So God bless you all, and like, share, comment, and let me know what you think. Shalom.